Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, game developers all around the world, I am Zon the Daddy Dev. I also go by the moniker Title Pending. Welcome to Devlog to Finish, and welcome to my English classroom. This is just one of the jobs I do to give me the chance to do game development stuff. I hope you like the new format. I have about maybe 3 to 4 hours a day, like Monday through Friday, actually treat game development like a part-time job. So this just makes it easier, so forth and so on. If you hate my face, if you want to punch me in the face, if you think I'm pretty, put a comment below about the new format. Now, Martin Novak had done a great job of breaking down the difference between a 2600X and a 2600. You can look at the comments. In the last video, I think they're very valid points. I don't want to spend too much time on them, but I do want to spend a lot of time more on this right here, is this idea that using, why did I bring up Blender in making or getting a game development rig? And for me, the reason for that is the way that I would actually make games. So he does have a valid point. If you take a model from Blender and you put it into something like Unity or Unreal or Godot, it looks different and the process is different. But what I'm be focusing on is why you would render images for animation and render three-dimensional backgrounds to actually make a two-dimensional game. And I know I'm using Wikipedia. It's my teachers in college or whatever would be ashamed of me. But anyway, the point is, this is where I found the box art. Donkey Kong Country, for the Super Nintendo, was misleading. And how it was misleading, it says an incredible 3D adventure in the kingdom of Kong. And the reason why this was misleading, this game was actually a 2D game. When I was a kid growing up, I fell for the marketing too, because I didn't understand the difference, or I couldn't see the difference on TVs back then. However, now we've got the evidence or the research to show that it was in fact a three-dimensional images rendered into 2D animations and or into 2D backgrounds. Here it is. This is a sprite sheet, and if you look at this sprite sheet, they took those three-dimensional images like you could do in Blender, and they made them into two-dimensional sprites that they could put in game. The levels themselves were also three-dimensional renders layered. They put layers and layers on top of each other to make the backgrounds. And these layers, if I remember the game correctly, because I don't want to play like a YouTube video on it, they were animated. So trees moved. These backgrounds were not static. So they're kind of like mini movies in a sense in the background while you played the game. Now they took this idea even further with Killer Instinct, and I don't know if Killer Instinct in the arcade was 3D, but apparently it may not have been, and definitely not for the home consoles, because again, the Super Nintendo just really didn't have the processing power to do 3D. I know what you're saying. Well, what about Mario Kart? What about Final Fantasy III, if you're old enough to remember those games? Final Fantasy III and Mario Kart, they did do some 3D looking effects, but just like Doom itself technically isn't 3D, that might have been just clever programming, and the system itself may not have had an actual 3D game on it at all. Might have been able to do 3D games, but when I did my research, even Killer Instinct 2 was still a two-dimensional game, rendering 3D images and putting them into two-dimensional images. I think this really sells the point between the differences of techniques back in that time frame, where you have, Street Fighter Ryu, who is completely done in 2D for a 2D game, and you have, Maya from Killer Instinct 2, who is done from three-dimensional images and then rendered for the game. As you can tell, we still have pixelization outside of the area of the character, and there is more shading for Maya than there is for Ryu. But again, this really shows that this is again using three-dimensional rendering technology to render out two-dimensional images to play for 2D games. Now, why do I bring this up, and where is a modern version of this? And that's Klang. Klang was a modern version of this. Now, before I play this, I just want you to note that in the foreground here, this is actually the player controlling the character, or at least, this is where the player should control the character, and this is a 2D platform. And in the background here is actually a movie, and I believe this is one of the boss battles. So Tom, the developer of this game, did a great job of integrating like movies from Blender that he rendered, and then integrating that with actual character animations that he also rendered for the game. And everything, as far as I know, was done in Blender. So I'm going to rewind this and enjoy the show. I might dance. Okay, that's a little too much. So again, as you can see here, all this stuff is done in Blender, all the enemy animations, so forth and so on, the foreground, the background. Again, anything that's moving, like this stuff right here that might be moving really fast, might actually be a movie. Now, the thing about this is that as we look more into it, I want to give a little bit of highlight why this game was so important at the time. And I actually might do another video related to marketing stuff, because was really some interesting stuff happened. So at the time, Tom was using the engine Construct 2. And if you don't know what Construct 2 is, or the time set, let me give you kind of a background information on this one. Developers who are using Unity, Unreal 4, oh, maybe it was Unreal 3, who knows? Unreal, any other engine, just hated or frowned upon developers who are using Construct. And the reason for that, which is fair, most developers on Construct 2 were not programmers. We couldn't do C#, we're terrible at C++. I am not the best GD script person, okay? I'm not the best coder. Yes, I agree with that assessment. However, then someone like Tom came in, who was a great sound engineer. He was a DJ. That's why I want to talk more about his marketing. He has a music career. He used his music career to launch this game. The game looked beautiful, but he couldn't program. He wasn't a very strong programmer. Nonetheless, when Tom started posting stuff and it started getting buzz and people wanted to share this game, he was honest and said, hey, I am using Construct 2. And by using Construct, or admitting that he was using that engine, this is another Tom. This is another Tom, not the Tom I'm talking about. The Construct 2 company, Ashley and Construct 2's Tom, right? Ashley and Tom, loved Tom's stuff so much. God, it's way too many Toms. Loved Klang so much that they started marketing the game along with their engine. And then what happened is you had a parallel situation. The more that the developers of Construct 2, the game engine, talked about Klang and how it was going to be like a mainstream success, it went back and forth, and both marketing campaigns boosted both each other's brand awareness, which was beautiful. So within the 2 years, a lot of hype was given to the game, and a lot of people wanted to play this game. But unfortunately, there are a lot of players that had performance issues. Like highlighted here, this game is blah, sucks. Once I reached the title screen, my PC completely froze. I don't know about why the title screen froze, but Clink brings up something that was interesting that was related to performance and Construct 2, and using this rendering method of taking three-dimensional Blender images and rendering them for 2D, right? And it's telling right here where Tom also kind of admits this. This is his minimum system requirements. And one of the reasons I did not buy the game, but I'm willing to buy it now, is I did not have an Intel Core i7. And to be honest, at this time, games that had minimum system requirements for the machine I had was really hard for me to run. So it was one of the reasons I didn't buy the game. He admitted that this was one of the problems. The game was a flop. Even though it had so much buzz, the minimum system requirements scared a lot of potential customers like me. The reason why he had done this again is, and I talked about this in another video, and I also talked about this in the Godot community on Facebook, was whatever your system is that you make the game on and you test it on is the first system that you test the game on. So again, whatever you play your game on technically is the system that can run your game on. And this is Tom's system. And again, what's interesting here is that he was just running on Windows 7 at the time, not even Windows 8. We look through now, or Windows 10. I believe Windows 10 is out at this point too. His graphics card is not bad. Like, actually, my graphics card at the time should have ran this, and he only had 4 gigabytes of RAM. So again, as a follow-up to the other video, this is what he used to develop a 3D game for 2D. Mind you not, though, he had a lot of his friends test the game, and they had higher-end machines that could run the game very well, but those were games that were geared to running, like, actual 3D games with 1080, 1080 NVIDIA graphics cards, so forth and so on, and had higher systems that could actually easily run this game, so forth and so on. As other users in the market at the time, and at this moment, as in any time, most Steam users and PC users have lower spec computers, so this unfortunately knocked out a lot of the market because, and this is more of what I've concluded, I feel that a lot of players who have lower end machines want to play like a 2D platformer because they believe a 2D platformer is not going to run their system to the ground. That's going to be easy to run on their ground. So that's just something to consider as anyone who develops games or makes games, that you should actually test your games on older systems so that you can put a better minimum requirement spec or better minimum requirements, and you can actually get more of the market that's on the PC platform. That's a lot. So how did I get all this information? Well, Tom is actually in the Construct 2 and 3 devs group, even though he's moved on to Unity because, well, obviously he needs a better engine to actually optimize his game. And as we talked about it in the Construct 2 or 3 community, I brought this up around when Cuphead was coming out, and I was doing two-dimensional vector graphics, and I realized, hey, I could make something like Cuphead. How hard would it be to run in Construct 2? And unfortunately, it would be really hard. The engine itself apparently has a problem with images and memory. If you take all the pings or all the files and the images, the system doesn't clean the images out very effectively. So what ends up happening is that all the images start building up in the engine, and then the CPU, the GPU, the computer the player is playing on starts choking on all those images. And you can read it here again. Hopefully I've covered this as best as I could. Keep me honest. I'm going to put a link to this conversation so you can chime in and say, you know, am I off or how correct I am? Because again, I am learning as I go, but this is my understanding from this conversation. Now, sorry for the Brum Chop Cup. I had to take care of my daughter, who is loving to distract me right now. That's why I'm a daddy dev. I don't know if you can hear in the background. She doesn't want to be in the camera. I put her on there. I want to say thank you to Martin for putting this on here. This is one of the reasons why I do these videos, is that I actually get out into the community and I actually talk to people and have conversations like this. So I love this. If anyone has any thoughts or questions about game development, please put a comment below, or anywhere you can find me on the internet. I want to say insert catchphrase here. I kind of still want to do maybe something before I have to go to work. My daughter's really distracting me. And again, you all have been lovely. I hope everyone's working well on their projects. I'll see you in the next one. I'm closing this one. Bye.